The words from a stranger at a gas pump were just casual local gossip. You see the lady with the sign by the freeway? She says her son's some big-shot millionaire in this city. Breaks your heart. For Michael Thorne, a 34-year-old tech founder worth $87 million, that sentence was a trigger. It would detonate the life he knew and expose a 5-year family betrayal he never saw coming. Michael Thorne lived in a 43rd floor penthouse, insulated by wealth and a carefully curated family narrative. His mother, Evelyn, was supposed to be safe in a comfortable retirement community, a story maintained by relatives he trusted. That single sentence at the gas station shattered the facade. It revealed a hidden world of elder neglect and a 5-year conspiracy of silence within his own family. This is the story of a son's desperate search for a mother he believed was cared for, and the devastating truth about why she was left to beg alone. For 5 years, Michael Thorne's success had been built on a foundation of painful distance. His company, Thorne Dynamics, had gone from a 2-person startup to a unicorn valued at over $600 million. His life was a blur of chartered flights, board meetings, and a waterfront mansion. And at the center of his carefully managed world was a story about his family, one he paid for and believed without question. Every month, like clockwork, a $12,000 wire transfer left Michael's account. It was sent to an entity called Silver Haven Senior Living, a boutique facility his sister, Rebecca, had found. She was the family liaison, the keeper of their mother, Evelyn's care. "Mom is happy," Rebecca would say during their brief scheduled calls. "She's making friends. She loves the gardens. It's the best place for her." Michael, buried in the pressure of scaling a global business, accepted the report. Sending money was his contribution. Handling the details was Rebecca. It was a silent agreement that began after their father's funeral, when their mother's grief seemed to push her into a fragility Michael felt ill-equipped to handle. The reality was a masterpiece of deception. Silver Haven Senior Living was not a physical facility. It was a shell company, a bank account controlled solely by Rebecca and her husband, David. The $12,000 did not pay for nurses or gardens. It financed Rebecca's boutique in a trendy neighborhood, David's sports car lease, and a sprawling suburban home. Their mother, Evelyn, was never inside a retirement community. For the first 2 years of the ruse, she lived in a converted garage apartment behind their house, a fact hidden from Michael during his rare, orchestrated visits where Evelyn was brought to a staged, rented suite for a few hours. Then, after a dispute over money, Rebecca told Evelyn she had to leave. With no income, no access to her own bank accounts which Rebecca had consolidated, and believing her successful son wanted nothing to do with her, Evelyn entered the shadow economy of the aged and abandoned. Michael's world was sleek glass and silent elevators. Hers was a nightly calculus of survival, which church basement offered a cot, which fast food bathroom allowed a cursory wash, which sidewalk corner was just visible enough for pity but not so prominent as to attract police attention. She carried her life in a single rolling suitcase and a worn backpack, and on a small hand-lettered cardboard sign, she had written the truth she believed to be her only remaining identity: "Please help. My son is a millionaire in this city. He doesn't know I'm here." The collision of these two realities began on a Tuesday afternoon. Michael was in his black luxury sedan, returning from a merger negotiation. Low on fuel, his driver pulled into an upscale gas station. While the tank filled, Michael stepped out to buy a bottle of water. That's when he overheard 2 attendants talking by the air pump. "You see the lady with the sign by the freeway off-ramp? The one with the gray hair, always with that little suitcase?" "Yeah, the one who says her son's some big-shot millionaire in this city. Breaks your heart. Probably just senile, you know." The words landed like a physical blow. A cold numbness spread from Michael's chest to his fingertips. It was the specificity that struck him. The gray hair, the suitcase, the claim about a millionaire son. A cascading series of denied intuitions suddenly roared to the surface. The evasiveness in Rebecca's voice, the fact he'd never received a direct bill from Silver Haven, his mother's subdued tone during their brief, supervised video calls, always from the same bland, plant-filled room. He didn't get back in the car. He walked over to the attendants, his $1,000 shoes crunching on the gravel. "This woman," he said, his voice strangely calm. "Where exactly is she?" 20 minutes later, Michael's car pulled over on the shoulder of a busy service road. And there, on a strip of brittle grass between the sidewalk and a concrete sound wall, he saw her, a small figure in a beige coat that was too large, sitting on the suitcase. A handmade sign rested against her knees. The wind tugged at her gray-white hair. She was looking down, not at the traffic, but at her own hands folded in her lap. It was a posture of profound resignation, a quiet extinguishing of hope. Michael stared, his breath caught in his throat. This wasn't a stranger. This was the woman who had read him bedtime stories, who had saved for a year to buy him a chemistry set, who had a specific, soft laugh when she was truly happy. It was his mother. The scale of the betrayal that had placed her here and his own complicit ignorance unfolded before him with terrifying clarity. He opened the car door, the city noise rushing in. But as he took one step onto the curb, his phone vibrated. It was Rebecca, the call he usually let go to voicemail. This time he answered, his eyes locked on his mother's hunched form just 50 yards away. "Michael, hi, just checking in. Everything's fine here. Mom's actually napping right now, but she sends her love." Rebecca's voice was light, practiced. The lie was so seamless, so casual that it confirmed everything. In that moment, Michael Thorne didn't see a homeless woman. He saw a crime scene, and the person on the other end of the phone was the primary architect. He ended the call without a word. He now faced an impossible choice: run to his mother and reveal himself, potentially overwhelming her, or first unravel the 5-year conspiracy that put her on this strip of grass. He chose the latter, but what he didn't yet know was that Rebecca's deception was far more calculated and far more dangerous than just stolen money. She had built a legal fortress to protect her secret, and she was prepared to defend it at all costs. He made the hardest decision of his life. He got back in the car. As the driver pulled back into traffic, Michael's eyes remained fixed on the rear window, watching his mother's solitary figure shrink into the cityscape. The emotional impulse to sprint to her side was overwhelming, but the strategic part of his mind, the part that built a company, took control. Charging in without evidence would achieve nothing. Rebecca would spin a story. His mother, in her vulnerable state, might even defend the lie out of shame or fear. He needed proof. He needed a case. His first call was not to a lawyer, but to his head of security, a former federal investigator named Leo. "I need a discreet team, 2 subjects, my sister, Rebecca Thorne Carson, and my mother, Evelyn Thorne. Full financials, all assets, current location and living conditions. I want a visual on my mother at all times, but no contact, and I need it in 4 hours. There was no question in his voice, only the cold clarity of a CEO initiating a hostile takeover. Because that's what this was. While Leo's team mobilized, Michael returned to his penthouse. He ignored the panoramic view and went straight to his study, firing up his laptop. He accessed the dedicated bank account used for the Silver Haven payments. For years, he had approved the transfers without scrutiny. Now he traced the routing number. It did not go to a corporate entity at a commercial address. It routed to a personal checking account at a regional bank under the name Rebecca Carson. The first piece of the facade crumbled. 4 hours later, as promised, Leo arrived. The report was concise and devastating. Evelyn Thorne had no active lease, no utility bills, no property in her name. Her Social Security payments, which she had begun receiving 2 years prior, were being direct deposited into a joint account she shared with Rebecca. That account showed a consistent pattern. The money was transferred out to Rebecca's primary account within 48 hours of arrival. The last withdrawal was 3 days ago. His mother was living on cash handouts, while her own benefits funded her daughter's lifestyle. The surveillance report was worse. Photos showed Evelyn moving between a daytime shelter in a church basement and her spot by the freeway. She visited a public library daily, likely for warmth and access to a bathroom. She carried her medications in a plastic bag. "She's known at the shelter," Leo said, his tone professional but grim. "They say she's quiet, never complains. She told a volunteer her daughter handles her finances and that she, between homes." The visual team confirmed she was currently at the shelter, which was locked down for the night. She was safe, for now. Then came the dossier on Rebecca. It was a portrait of a life inflated on stolen air. The boutique was losing money. The mortgage on her home was 6 months behind. David's car loan was in default. The $12,000 a month from Michael wasn't funding luxury. It was a desperate lifeline preventing a financial collapse. Rebecca wasn't just greedy, she was cornered. And a cornered animal, Michael knew, was the most dangerous kind. Armed with this, he did what he had avoided for 5 years. He called his sister, and he did not let her speak first. "Rebecca, it's Michael. I'm coming to see Mom at Silver Haven tomorrow morning. 10 a.m. I expect you to be there to let me in." The silence on the line was profound. Then came the fluster. "Tomorrow, Michael, it's not a good day. They have a big activity planned. Maybe next week." 10 a.m., Rebecca, he repeated, his voice like steel. "Or I will have my lawyers and a judge there with me to facilitate a welfare check. Your choice." He ended the call. The trap was set. She would have to scramble to maintain the illusion, and in that scramble, she would make a mistake. He was right. At 9:15 the next morning, Leo called. "Your sister just left her house. She's not headed toward any senior facilities. She's driving to a short-term rental corporate apartment complex on the west side. She used a key code to enter Unit 302. She's been inside for 10 minutes. The apartment was rented yesterday afternoon under the name R. Carson for a 1-week term." Michael felt a surge of cold fury. She was staging a set. She was going to bring their mother to a temporary apartment, dress it with a few personal items, and pretend it was her permanent home. The depth of the premeditation was breathtaking. He changed his plan. "Have the team ready at her house. The moment she leaves with my mother, they go in. I want every document, every computer, every file box, and send me the address of that rental. I'm going there now." Michael arrived at the bland beige apartment complex at 9:50. He didn't go to the unit. He sat in his car in the visitor lot, watching. At 10:05, a familiar sedan pulled in. Rebecca was driving. In the passenger seat, wearing a clean but outdated sweater, was Evelyn. Her hair was neatly brushed. She looked small and confused. Rebecca helped her out of the car, speaking with an exaggerated, cheerful energy, and guided her toward the building. They disappeared inside. Michael waited 5 agonizing minutes. Then he got out and walked to Unit 302. He could hear Rebecca's voice through the door, high and false. "And this is your nice new television, Mom, see? And your photos are right here." He didn't knock. He used the key code Leo's team had already acquired. The door lock buzzed, and he pushed it open. The scene was pathetic. A sparse, impersonal living room. A suitcase, his mother's familiar suitcase, open on the floor. A few framed photos from their childhood placed hastily on a bookshelf. Rebecca was frozen in the middle of the room, a vase of grocery store flowers in her hand. Evelyn was sitting stiffly on the edge of a new-looking sofa, her hands in her lap. "Michael," Rebecca gasped, the color draining from her face. "What are you? How did you?" Evelyn looked up. Her eyes, which had been dull with confusion, widened. A flicker of recognition, then immense, heartbreaking shame flooded her features. She looked down at her hands again, as if wishing to disappear. Michael ignored his sister. He walked slowly across the room and knelt in front of his mother. He took her hands in his. They were cold and rough. "Mom," he said, his voice breaking, "I'm so sorry, I didn't know." Evelyn began to cry, silent tears tracking down her cheeks. She didn't pull her hands away. She just shook her head, unable to speak. Rebecca found her voice, panic twisting into aggression. "Get away from her. You have no right to barge in here. You abandoned her. I've been the one taking care of everything while you played billionaire." Michael stood up, turning to face her. The calm he felt was more terrifying than any shout. "Where's her room at Silver Haven, Rebecca? What's her room number?" She's between rooms right now. They're renovating her wing. That's why we're here temporarily." "Show me the lease agreement for Silver Haven. Show me one bill, one medical record, one piece of official correspondence from them." Rebecca's mouth opened and closed. Her eyes darted toward the door. I don't have that here. It's at my house." "It's not at your house," Michael said. "My team is there right now. They're collecting the documents that show you created a shell company called Silver Haven Senior Living. The bank statements showing you diverted $144,000 a year of my money into your personal accounts. The records showing you emptied Mom's Social Security." He took a step closer. "You didn't just steal from me, Rebecca. You stole from her. You made her homeless." The facade shattered. Rebecca's defiance crumpled into a wild, defensive rage. "You think you can judge me? You left. You sent a check and thought you were done. You have no idea what it's like to deal with her, the neediness, the decline. I was drowning. The money was for my services, for my stress. It was then that Evelyn spoke, her voice a fragile thread. You told me he didn't want to see me. You told me the money stopped. You said I was a burden to him. The room went silent. The final, cruelest layer of the betrayal was now exposed. Rebecca hadn't just stolen money, she had weaponized their estrangement. She had isolated their mother completely, making Evelyn believe her own son had cast her aside. Michael looked at his sister, not with hatred, but with a profound, final disconnect. You're finished, Rebecca. You will be served with civil suits for fraud and conversion. I will be filing a criminal report for elder financial abuse. Every asset you have, every cent, will be clawed back. Rebecca laughed, a harsh, brittle sound. You're bluffing. You won't air the family's dirty laundry in court. The publicity would ruin you. Watch me, Michael said. He turned back to his mother. Mom, you're coming with me right now. But as he helped Evelyn to her feet, his phone buzzed. It was Leo. Michael, we have a problem at the house. David is here. He's barricaded himself in the home office with a shredder. He's destroying documents. Local police are on scene, but he's refusing to come out. He's yelling about having insurance. Michael's blood ran cold. Insurance. That meant copies, hidden assets, or something else, leverage. David and Rebecca weren't just spendthrifts, they were desperate strategists. They had known this day might come. And as Michael led his trembling mother out of the fake apartment, he realized the battle for her future was just beginning. The war to protect everything else he had built was about to explode. The word insurance hung in the air, a toxic vapor. Michael guided his mother into the back of his car, instructing the driver to take her to his penthouse and to call his personal physician to meet them there. He gave Evelyn's hand a final squeeze. I'll be there soon, Mom. You're safe now. The look of terrified confusion in her eyes haunted him as the car pulled away. He took a different vehicle, driven by a member of Leo's team, and sped toward Rebecca's suburban home. The scene there was chaotic. 2 police cruisers were parked at odd angles in the driveway. Leo stood on the front lawn, talking to an officer. Inside, through the bay window, Michael could see David's silhouette moving frantically in the lit room. He stopped shredding when the police announced they breached the door, Leo reported. He's just packing now. He's demanding to speak to you, only you. Michael didn't hesitate. He walked past the officers, through the front door and down the hallway to the office. The door was ajar. He pushed it open. The room was a blizzard of paper. A high-speed shredder in the corner hummed, overloaded and smoking. David stood amid the chaos, his face slick with sweat, holding a thick manila envelope. You think you've won? David spat, his voice trembling with adrenaline. You have no idea what we set in motion. Give me the envelope, David, Michael said, his voice eerily calm. Or what, you'll sue me? Your sister already told me. It's over. But if I go down, you're coming with me. This, he shook the envelope, is the narrative, and we've already sent copies to someone who knows how to use it. A cold dread seeped into Michael's bones. Who? David smiled, a brittle, ugly thing. Martin Croft. The name was a punch to the gut. Martin Croft was the ruthless founder of Apex Dynamics, Michael's most bitter competitor. For years, they had battled for market share, with Croft employing every dirty trick in the book. A merger proposal had been summarily rejected by Michael just 3 months prior, prompting Croft to vow he'd see Thorn Dynamics in the ground. You've been funneling my money to my competitor, Michael stated, the pieces snapping together with horrifying clarity. Not funneling, investing, David corrected, a manic gleam in his eye. We needed a patron, someone with resources and a reason to hate you. Rebecca reached out to him 6 months ago when we realized the money from you wouldn't be enough forever. We traded information for capital, your internal roadmaps, your client lists from 2 years ago, and a story. A story about a heartless billionaire who threw his senile mother out on the street and financially abused his sister for trying to care for her. The scale of the betrayal expanded beyond family into corporate warfare. Rebecca and David hadn't just stolen, they had sold him out. Croft has been building a campaign, David continued. He's waiting for the right moment, the moment you go public with lawsuits against your own family. Then he releases it all. The court documents will be framed as proof. The media will eat it alive. Tech titan sued by destitute sister while mother begs on streets. Your board will panic. Your investors will flee. Croft will swoop in and buy the pieces for pennies. Our insurance is a partnership stake in whatever he takes from you. Michael absorbed this, his mind racing through the implications. A direct legal attack was now a tactical nightmare. It would trigger Croft's smear campaign. He had to secure his mother's well-being and dismantle this conspiracy without playing into their hands. He held out his hand, the envelope now. Defeated, knowing the police were right outside, David handed it over. Michael opened it. Inside were not just financial records. There were fabricated emails, supposedly from Michael to Rebecca, callously discussing their mother as a burden and directing her to make the problem go away. There were photos of Evelyn looking disheveled, time-stamped from months ago, with notes suggesting Michael had denied her help. It was a complete, manufactured narrative of filial neglect. At that moment, Michael's phone rang. It was his chief operations officer, her voice tight with stress. "Michael, we have a problem. A tip from a credible reporter at the Business Chronicle. They're asking for comment on a story about family welfare lawsuits and corporate governance concerns at Thorne Dynamics. They've been given a lead, something about to break." Croft was making his move earlier than expected. The leak had already started. Michael looked at David. "You triggered it when Rebecca called you from the apartment." David's smugness vanished, replaced by fear. He hadn't meant to pull the trigger yet. Croft was acting on his own timeline. Michael turned and left the office, instructing Leo to let the police take David for trespass and destruction of property, a holding charge. He had bigger fires to fight. He called his crisis PR firm and his corporate legal team, initiating a lockdown. But as he sped back toward the city, toward his mother and his crumbling empire, his phone rang again. This time, it was his physician, Dr. Evans. "Michael, you need to come to the penthouse immediately. It's your mother. She's having what appears to be a severe panic attack, but her blood pressure is dangerously high. She's disoriented and in significant distress. I've called an ambulance. We are taking her to University Hospital." The world tilted. The corporate battle, the smear campaign, it all faded into noise. His mother, broken by years of deception and hardship, was now suffering a physical collapse. He redirected the car to the hospital, his heart hammering against his ribs. When he arrived at the emergency room, he was directed to a curtained bay. Evelyn was on a gurney, an IV in her arm, her face ashen. Monitors beeped erratically. She was murmuring, caught between past and present. "Mustn't tell Michael. He's too busy. Don't bother him." A gentle but firm hand touched his arm. It was a social worker. "Mr. Thorne, I'm Ms. Gable. We need to talk about your mother's situation. The doctor is concerned about severe malnutrition, dehydration, and the psychological trauma. We also need to understand her living conditions. The nurse said she was brought from a homeless shelter." This was it. The institutional machinery was engaging. A hospital social worker filing a report of suspected elder abuse could trigger immediate state intervention. It could also become a public document, fuel for Croft's fire. Michael had to navigate this with absolute care, prioritizing his mother's health while protecting against legal and reputational fallout. He took a deep breath, choosing radical honesty. "Ms. Gable, my mother has been the victim of a multi-year financial exploitation and fraud by a family member. I only discovered she was homeless this morning. I am her son, and I am here to assume full responsibility for her care. I want the best possible medical treatment for her, regardless of cost. I also need your guidance on how to properly report the crime against her while ensuring her safety and dignity." The social worker's expression shifted from bureaucratic caution to focused concern. She nodded. "Okay, let's start from the beginning. And you should know, in this state, the hospital is a mandated reporter of suspected elder abuse. A report will be filed with Adult Protective Services. It's not a mark against you if you're the one bringing it to light. It might actually help." For the next 2 hours, Michael did not leave his mother's side. He gave a statement to a hospital risk manager and the social worker. He authorized a full medical workup. He called his personal attorney and directed him to contact the district attorney's office about filing criminal charges against Rebecca and David, preempting any distorted narrative. He was building a fortress of truth, but it was a race against time. As Evelyn stabilized, drifting into a sedated sleep, Michael stepped into the hallway. He checked his phone, dozens of missed calls. One was from his head of PR. The message was clear. The Business Chronicle was publishing a story in the morning. The headline draft read, "Behind the Tech Glory, a Family Fracture at Thorne Dynamics." He was out of time. The private family hell was about to become a public spectacle. He had one night to prepare his defense, to shield his mother, and to orchestrate a counter-strike against Martin Croft. He leaned against the cold hospital wall, staring at the floor. He had spent years building walls of money and power, thinking they made him safe. Now, the only thing that mattered was in a hospital bed, and the only strength he had left was the truth. But in a world of spin and forged emails, would the truth be enough? The final battle for his family and his future would begin at dawn. The night in the hospital was a war room without walls. Michael sat in the quiet family lounge, his laptop glowing, orchestrating a defense on two fronts. With his mother sleeping under medical guard, he worked the phone. First, he directed his legal team to file the criminal complaint against Rebecca and David first thing in the morning, beating the news cycle. The complaint would be a factual, brutal document, backed by bank records, the shell company paperwork, and a sworn affidavit from the shelter director detailing Evelyn's plight. It would be a preemptive strike of truth. Second, he called his board chairman. He didn't sugarcoat it. He explained the family fraud, the involvement of Martin Croft, and the impending smear campaign. "I am handling it," Michael said, his voice unwavering, "but you need to hear it from me before you read it in the headlines. My focus for the next 48 hours will be on my mother's health. I trust the executive team to manage operations." To his surprise, the chairman offered full support. The years of trust Michael had built mattered. As dawn broke, the Business Chronicle story went live. The headline was brutal: Thorne Dynamics CEO enmeshed in family elder abuse allegations. But attached to the article, as a separate document, was a statement from Michael Thorne's law firm. It was not a denial. It was a stunning, detailed chronology of the fraud perpetrated against him and his mother, complete with a link to a public repository of evidence. The narrative was flipped. The story was no longer about allegations against Michael. It was about a CEO who had just discovered a horrific crime against his own parent and was taking swift, transparent action. Martin Croft's planned smear dissolved in the morning light. By 7 a.m., industry blogs were running pieces titled "Competitor Exploited Family Tragedy in Failed Smear Attempt." Croft, realizing his weapon had turned on him, went radio silent. His stock took a minor hit. Michael's, after an initial wobble, stabilized. The board held firm. At 9 a.m., two detectives from the Financial Crimes Unit arrived at the hospital to interview Evelyn. With Michael and a victim's advocate present, Evelyn, though frail, gave a clear statement. She described how Rebecca had taken control of her mail, her bank cards, and had slowly isolated her. She confirmed the lies about Michael abandoning her. She cried when she described the eviction from the garage apartment, the first night at the shelter. The detectives were professional, but their stern expressions softened with empathy. The criminal case was now ironclad. By noon, Rebecca and David were in custody, charged with multiple counts of felony elder financial abuse, fraud, and conspiracy. Their bail was set high, secured by the very assets they had purchased with stolen money. The boutique, the house, the cars, all were frozen. The insurance had been a mirage. Croft abandoned them completely, cutting all ties to avoid liability. The legal storm was subsiding, but the human healing was just beginning. Evelyn remained in the hospital for 5 days. She was treated for malnutrition, dehydration, and received a full psychological evaluation. The diagnosis included severe depression and complex trauma, but the doctors were hopeful. With stability, proper nutrition, and therapy, her prognosis was good. Michael visited every waking moment. He wasn't putting out corporate fires. At first, their conversations were halting, laden with 5 years of manufactured distance. "I believed her," Evelyn whispered on the second day, unable to meet his eyes. "She showed me fake bank statements, said you were cutting me off to force me into a state home. I was so ashamed. I thought I'd burdened you." "You could never be a burden, Mom," Michael said, holding her hand. "The only failure was mine. I wrote checks instead of paying attention. I let distance become neglect." A turning point came on the third day. Michael brought a small box to her room. Inside was her old, worn suitcase, but he had cleaned and repaired it, and he had placed inside it a new item, a simple, leather-bound journal. "The doctor said writing might help," he said softly, "and I thought you might want to keep track of things for your new place." Evelyn looked from the suitcase to her son's face. "New place?" Michael nodded. "I've leased a penthouse in my building. It has a wraparound terrace with a garden view. It's being furnished right now. There's a room for a live-in nurse, if you want one, or just for guests. It's yours, for as long as you want it." He paused. "I'd like to be your neighbor, if you'll have me." Evelyn Thorne, who had not smiled a real smile in years, did so then. It was weak, but it was genuine. It was a beginning. A week later, Evelyn was discharged. Michael took her directly to the new apartment. It was spacious, sunny, and filled with familiar comforts, her old reading chair reupholstered, her book collection shelved, family photos from before the estrangement displayed on the walls. A kind, experienced caregiver named Maria was there to help her settle in. That evening, Michael cooked dinner for them in her kitchen, a simple pasta dish, something he hadn't done since college. They ate on the terrace, watching the city lights emerge. They didn't talk about the past. They talked about the garden she wanted to plant in pots. The following Monday, Michael returned to work. The corporate world had moved on, the scandal now a footnote. His leadership, tested in fire, emerged stronger. He initiated a new corporate philanthropy program focused on elder care and homelessness, funding shelters and legal aid services. He didn't do it for PR, he did it because he now understood the fragile line between security and despair. The final court proceedings were a formality. Rebecca and David, faced with overwhelming evidence, accepted a plea deal. They were sentenced to prison terms and ordered to pay restitution, a sum they would be paying for the rest of their lives. Michael attended the sentencing. He felt no victory, only a deep, abiding sorrow for the family that was irrevocably broken. One afternoon, 3 months after bringing his mother home, Michael was in her apartment helping her sort through a box of old papers from storage. They were laughing over a faded drawing he'd made in 2nd grade. Then, at the bottom of the box, Evelyn went very still. She pulled out a small, sealed envelope, yellowed with age. It was addressed to Michael in her careful handwriting. The postmark was from over 5 years ago, just after his father's funeral. "I wrote this," she said, her voice quiet. "I never sent it. I was too proud or too scared." Michael took the envelope and opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper. "My dearest Michael, asterisk. I know you are soaring to heights your father and I only dreamed of. Do not look down, do not worry for me, I am strong. The money you send is too much, but I save it, for you, for a rainy day or for when you might stumble. A mother's job is to be a safety net, even if you never see it, even if you never need it. I am always here, always your mom. All my love, asterisk." Taped to the bottom of the letter was a bankbook for a savings account. Michael, with trembling fingers, opened it. The account had been opened with the very first Silver Haven transfer he'd ever sent. And every month, like clockwork, his mother had deposited $500 of the money he'd sent into this account. The balance had grown. She had been silently saving for him, even as she was being systematically robbed. It was her secret act of love, her defiance against the narrative that she was just a burden. She had been trying to protect him all along. Michael looked up at his mother, tears streaming down his face. She reached out and wiped one away with her thumb, just as she had when he was a boy. "See," she said softly, "I told you I was saving it for you." In that moment, Michael Thorne, the self-made millionaire, understood the true currency of life. It wasn't in bank statements or corporate valuations. It was in a dusty envelope, in a $500 monthly sacrifice made in love, and in the quiet, unbreakable resilience of a mother's heart. He had gone to the gas station that day thinking he was successful. He left it, having lost everything he thought mattered, only to find the only thing that ever truly did. The journey back to each other would be long, but they had finally come home. Michael Thorne's story is a specific tragedy, but the silence that enabled it is a universal condition. In the rush of our own lives, we build narratives about the people we love, stories that are convenient, that absolve us of worry or duty. We trust the report, we send the check, we accept the curated version of their happiness. We mistake financial provision for connection. And in that space between what we believe and what is real, terrible suffering can take root. Evelyn Thorne was one hidden face among hundreds of thousands. According to the National Council on Aging, 1 in 10 elderly Americans experiences some form of abuse or neglect, most often at the hands of family. The Centers for Disease Control report that hundreds of thousands of seniors are intentionally neglected each year. Their stories don't make headlines until a random comment at a gas station, a concerned neighbor, or a crisis forces them into the light. We walk past these quiet fractures every day, in our own families and in our communities, often without seeing them. Michael's journey forces a difficult question. What narratives are we accepting without question? What truths are we avoiding because they are inconvenient, painful, or demand a change we don't feel equipped to make? The villain in this story wasn't just greed, it was willful ignorance on all sides. Rebecca's active cruelty was facilitated by Michael's passive distance. The redemption wasn't found in his wealth or his corporate strategy, but in his decision to finally look, to truly see the person he had relegated to a supporting role in his own life story. The miracles we need are rarely dramatic interventions. They are moments of uncomfortable attention, a lingering question, a second look at a story that doesn't quite add up, the courage to have a difficult conversation. Michael's miracle arrived as gossip from a stranger. It was a thread, and because he chose to pull it, an entire world of hidden pain unraveled, making space for a fragile, beautiful rebuilding. We often carry the belief that past failures are permanent, that broken trust cannot be mended. But this story reminds us that grace often waits in the ruins we are most afraid to examine. Love, even when buried under years of neglect and betrayal, can have a startling endurance. It can be waiting in a sealed envelope, in a silent act of sacrifice, in the simple, terrifying decision to reach out. If this story made you think of someone or revealed a hidden corner of your own heart, let it be a catalyst, not for guilt, but for connection. Share it with someone who might need to hear it today. And if you want to join us for more journeys into the profound and often overlooked stories of human resilience, don't forget to subscribe and click the bell icon. Your attention is the first step towards seeing the unseen. Until next time.